Hey, Ray, welcome. We've got a very interesting conversation today. So this is a bit of labor of love. We're going to talk about the origin story and the solutions behind Slotted. I'm joined with Joe McIntyre, who is the GM of Slotted. Joe, how you doing?
Excited to be talking about this with you and hear kind of the origin story and what we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, this has been something that we've been working on for a while, independently and then together, and I'm just really excited for what we want to do. So I guess where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think let's start at the beginning. You said that we have been working on it separately and then together, but really the impactful work was being done by you, your brainchild, and your team. So why don't we start from the very beginning? How did Slotted come to be? Walk us through what prompted you to really say, hey, this is a problem we need to go out there and we can solve it.
Yeah, this has been the evolution of several different businesses that we have as part of the ISPA group. It all started with consulting. We were doing a lot of fulfillment center RFPs, and we became known very quickly for having some of the most comprehensive, in depth, easy to understand RFPs that are out there. And so we really honed in on what it was that providers were looking for, what it was that brands need to put together, and we've honed that over the last 7 or 8 years. And we recognize that there is a lot of just need out there, both in not only understanding who's out there, but then also how do you actually put an RFP together. And so we've toyed with a couple of different ideas. We had a precursor to Slotted called the ISBA Exchange, which we put out as basically a free database. It was a very large open database where people could go through and search. Personally, I don't believe in gatekeeping information, and so we wanted to make a way that was fully accessible to people. And so we put the list of these providers that were out there. But as we went through there were more and more things that were popping up where people were starting to look to say, I want to do this myself, or I need an expert to do it, or how do I really know who's good and things out there. So really, the Slotted came out of the ISB exchange, and it was really just a new pitch on how you go about finding and qualifying a provider.
Right. So part of that, as you go out and you're looking to qualify or find a new provider, is understanding what makes one person different from the other, and then also you mentioned how comprehensive the RFPs that you were doing, you were known for from the ISBA side. So what are some of those challenges on both sides of the equation for brands when they're going into an RFP process, and from a fulfillment provider perspective when they're trying to look and find, hey, who is the right brand to bring into my location? You clearly had a bunch of experience seeing that and you were well known for it, but what are those challenges that you saw, and was there something that stuck out on either side just over and over and over again as a pain point?
Yeah, let's start from the brand perspective first. And the first question people always give is, who do I talk to, right? Who are even the providers that are out there? And there's basically three ways that a brand will find a provider. They will either talk to somebody, right? This could be a consultant, it could be a friend, could be a Slack group, but they're asking the world to say, who should I work with? But the problem with that is that that person is only limited to the providers that they know, and their experience is only to the time that they work with that provider. So I may have a really good provider that I worked with 3 years ago, but if there's been an ownership change and they're no longer a good provider, I may recommend, oh yeah, go work with XYZ because they're awesome, right? And then that may be very different. So that's the first problem. The second way that people go out and try to find a provider is they will Google, right? That's a big thing. And it's a great way to find some folks, but you're going to find the providers that are the best at SEO as opposed to the providers that are best for your business. And so again, like a place to start, there's some great providers out there that do a lot of great SEO work, but again, it's difficult to understand who's really good for me. And the third way that people go out and find somebody is, this is the most scrappy way in my opinion, is you reverse engineer who your competitors are shipping from. And so you look at this and say, all right, I really admire Harry's. I really admire Allbirds. I really admire Majuri. And so you order a product, you figure out the address that came from, and you do your best to step into who's there. Well, just because you're working with somebody who is servicing a very big brand doesn't mean that that could be the right fit for you and your brand. And so just this question of who to talk to and where to even start your search is a very, very big thing.
That's super interesting because I've been on both sides of that equation, and that's how you and I came to know each other. And we used to see that all the time. Just because brand A and brand B operate in the same space and sell the same product and are roughly on the same trajectory and journey from the outside looking in, doesn't mean that they're internally optimized for the same things. That what matters to their C-suite and to their board is really all of the same metrics. They're not designed internally the same way to drive margin or drive profitability, or one may be focused on top line and growth at all costs, and one may be focused on profitability instead. And so just because it looks like they're the exact same doesn't necessarily mean they have the same need, which is an interesting way to talk through it, an interesting way to think about it. And part of why I got so excited to join up with you and take this from just the brainchild and what you had started developing into what we brought to the market.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right. I mean, you think about if I am a up and coming CPG brand, I could go see who Procter and Gamble is using for D2C, but is that the right fit for me? Do I really want to be, saddled with Procter and Gamble's supply chain as a young brand? But that's all just to figure out who's on your list. And then the other problem that's there for brands is every 3PL website looks the exact same. Let me know if you've heard this one before. There's a 3PL website that says, "Hey, our customers love us. We ship on time, and we're going to give you a great value." Well, of course they're going to say that, right? And so there's this huge thing where it's like, well, how do I really know if they're good or not? I need these testimonials. I need to see actual data. I need to see these understandings of why someone actually is different than what's out there. And so that's a very difficult thing.
Right. Well, to build on that even further, it's difficult from both sides. You're on that website, one of the million that we've seen before, that's also saying we reach 98% of the US in 2 days and we're 99.9% on time and in full all the time. Asterisk, 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 asterisk in the small print, right? But then there's a contact us, and it's 5 very general, generic questions about your brand. And does that really give the fulfillment provider the real view of who you are? And if you're a lead, the lead,
Yeah.
the only lead I ever want to talk to or not. And then on the flip side of that too, from the fulfillment provider side, they're seeing one-line emails that say, I have 10 pallets, I do 10,000 orders a month, send me your rates, right? And that's a bad starting point too. And that's a challenge for a lot of people to solve, right? You mentioned there's a lot of different ways that you can find brands as a provider, or you can find a provider as a brand. But at the end of the day, I think that 2,200 plus 3PL companies in the fulfillment space in the US at the end of 2023, that number to a factor of what N for brands that are popping up or are operating every single day. So there's no one size fits all type model for doing anything, and that makes it super complex and difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And let's just talk about the problems that providers have when they're
Yeah.
trying to match brands. I mean, you talked about how there are a lot of just really bad leads that come through to a provider. And it could be someone that is just trying to fish for pricing. It could be a competitor. It could be somebody who just doesn't know what they're doing. And so as a salesperson for a 3PL, you have to take every one of those conversations, right? You have to take every one of those leads. And that's just a huge inefficient way. I mean, how much better would it be if you could screen out and only have the people that match your ICP coming to you to even talk to? And that's one of the things that we built into Slotted. But beyond that, the difficulty with providers is, how do you go about establishing a relationship? Everybody that I talk to, both on the brand side and the 3PL side, talks about how important it is to have a really good relationship with your provider. But if you look at where the industry has been going and where things are, there is a lot of middlemen that are coming up, whether it be technology or people or companies. And there's just this thought that, I'm going to have to communicate via PDF. I'm going to have to communicate via an algorithm that just basically says, well, here's my pricing, give me the deal. And then you're going back and trying to establish that relationship differently. What we did with Slotted from the beginning was we wanted to put relationship building at the core of what we were doing. And so the thought here is that in Slotted, you don't talk to somebody from Slotted. Like, this is a platform. You message directly with the brand. You have a framework. You can collaborate with your team directly about what's going on. And you're starting to build that relationship from day one, from the time that you get that lead, all the way up through when you achieve winning that deal.
Yeah, in a couple of the things you shared in the last few minutes, we're dancing around the things that happen within Slotted, and I think that's a good transition point for us to move to. You talked about the relationship building being at the core, and that's not to say that there aren't other ways that are out there or things that people prioritize efficiency, right? But not everybody prioritizes it that way. We're still in operations. It's not a matter of if something goes wrong, it's a matter of when it goes wrong. And when it goes wrong, there's no better feeling than being able to get to somebody on the line that understands you, that knows who you are, that knows what you're achieving to, so that you can work collectively to get ahead. And not just in the fulfillment space, but in general, is getting lost as we become much more focused on automation, efficiency, more with less, right? And so when I think about the warehousing space, and I think about the logistics space, these are spaces that can be improved with automation and development and algorithms, but there's always going to be a need for that one-to-one relationship. If you're a small fish in a big pond, it's hard to expect to get that kind of attention, right? The Pareto rule still exists, right? 20% of your volume causes 80% of your time, your headache, and your concerns, and 80% of your volume comes from the 20% that's really good. So how are you allocating your time as a fulfillment provider, or how are you allocating your time as a brand, focusing on growing your brand and not doing the fulfillment provider's job for them, right? And I think that's effective and important. But
Yeah. I think too, like if you don't care about the relationship with your provider and you just want someone to ship stuff out and maybe take a phone call, just use Amazon, right? FBA is out there. Like just do that. But if you want to do any sort of customization, if you want to be able to go see your stuff, if you want to be able to have a partner who's thinking about how to grow your business with you, then you're going to need to have someone. And those are the things that you have to screen for in that search process.
yeah, you talked about it before. Google. If you need to search for that very specifically, how do you do it today? And how does Slotted provide that for you?
Yeah, so I think that we should probably take a step back and talk about
Yeah.
what slotted is. So Joe, I want you to kind of we're jumping in. We're assuming people have already looked at the website, but if you had to define what slotted is, how would you go from there?
Yeah. At its core, Slotted is a marketplace for fulfillment. If we go one level down further, it is a service for fulfillment providers to find high intent, high quality opportunities, not leads, opportunities. And it is a tool for brands to search effectively with peace of mind to find the right partner for them, knowing that there's neutrality on both sides of the equation. You mentioned it earlier. Slotted isn't involved in the conversation. It's self-guided. If you want somebody to just do it all for you, we're happy to refer you to a bunch of people that we know that do a really great job at that. If you want to take control of what you are doing and what is happening in your RFP process, whether you're a brand or a provider, that is where Slotted comes in. There is no middleman. There is no gatekeeping. We are as fair and as neutral as we possibly can be when it comes to that fulfillment provider, right? Any search, any list, anything you get back is based solely on factual information provided by the brand and by the fulfillment provider themselves, right?
Yeah,
It's open, right? Anybody can be on it. If you're a warehouse, you do fulfillment, you can be on the website. Abide by our rules and regulations, be a good person, don't go against our terms and conditions. But our goal is to never remove anybody from the website because that dilutes the ability for brands at any stage to find the right partner for them, right? And that's what we want to be. We want to be an ecosystem that can help elevate the fulfillment space.
that's great, Joe. I think it's important to talk about what slotted is not, and I
Yeah.
think slotted is not a matchmaker, which we talked about.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on the challenges that are inherent in the matchmaking process as it exists today?
So you may have had experiences with matchmakers that are different, but if I aggregate it up to the full level, matchmakers are out there to help you streamline the top of the funnel if you're a fulfillment provider and help you feel like you've saved time if you're a brand, right? Their value proposition is we are here to do this for you and help you in that search, which is noble and needed and good. Where there is a challenge is it can be unclear who they are working for and who they are working with, which can inherently bring in bias or bring in a level of concern from either side of the equation. If I'm a fulfillment provider and I'm working with a lead generation service or I'm working with a matchmaker, how do I know that these are legitimate leads that are being sent to me? People who are actually searching for stuff right now versus maybe in the future, right? And how do I know that this just didn't go out to a database of 3,000 contacts, right? And if I'm a brand, if I got this list of 10 people back and I have engaged with a matchmaker or a consultant or a lead gen, right? Even broader than just matchmakers right now, how do I know that that person is working in my best interest? Because I have put money towards them to some extent. And so is this list of people they've brought back to me really the right people for me? Is it the people that are right for me and pay them the most money on a rev share potentially? Or are these just the people that aren't even right for me, are willing to talk to anybody, and they're just people that are open to leads right now and responded to the message back about we have an opportunity if you would like to talk to them, right? I want to be careful because that makes it paint the matchmaking space and the consulting space in somewhat of a negative light. There is a need and a use case for that in general, right? The biggest challenge in the RFP process often becomes education and experience, right? Especially on the brand side. They are working with positive intent. They are working with what they know, but the challenge is many of them are not experts in operations, not experts in fulfillment, and haven't gone through this part of their life cycle as a business before, either with this company or with somebody else, right? So they don't know what they don't know, and they're assuming the person on the other end of the conversation is operating in their best interest and is an expert in what they do. And on the flip side, the fulfillment provider is there as a sales guy thinking that the brand actually knows everything about their brand inside and out, knows where their warts are being transparent and forthcoming about them, whether they actually know about them or not. And it causes this challenge to be a disconnect. And that's just if they're interacting directly. If you layer in somebody in the middle, that gets even murkier, right? And so how do we really know that we're comfortable with the decision we make, right? And for fulfillment providers and for brands, we talked about it before. It's not if something goes wrong, it's when something goes wrong. And so when something goes wrong, the first reaction when there's a third party involved is to say, well, it wasn't me, it must have been the brand. And the brands go, well, it wasn't me, this must be a terrible provider. The third party in the middle is not the person who actually caused the problem, but it's an easy person to point to say, hey, this is why it went south quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so if we want to elevate what we're doing in the space, let's push the onus back to the people whose businesses are on the line when they're making these decisions with each other. And there's a lot of people out there that want it to be that way. And those are the people that we want to serve.
I think that's great. And you know, obviously I have a consultancy, like I'm highly vested in this area. The way I think about it is that consultants are there to educate the brand and should be a fiduciary to the brand. And
Yes.
so in order to really be a fiduciary, you should only be paid by the brand. And again, that might be expensive. Not everybody has thousands of dollars that they want to spend on these sorts of things. The matchmaking piece, I think there's value to that, but let's call it for what it is. This is an outsourced sales operation of the fulfillment centers. And I think that where things can get a little bit difficult is, like you mentioned, did you give me the right provider for me or did you give the right provider for you? That's a problem. And what a lot of brands aren't aware of is the fact that they make this introduction and they're getting 2, 3, 5, maybe up to 10% of the value of that contract sent back to them. And so you're seeing that premium, let's suppose it's a 5% rev share, that's being built into your costs that are coming through there. And so really the question then becomes, if the matchmaker is going to be there, provide value one time to make an introduction and then ramp off, is that worth the investment that you're going to be making over the life of that contract? And I've actually seen this before where there are brands that have used a matchmaker, love their fulfillment provider, but had to leave because they needed a lower cost and they couldn't get over that hump that they had contractually obligated to. And so I just think there needs to be more transparency about what these things actually are and just make sure everybody's aware of it, because I think it's a great model for the folks that are ready for it.
Right. And I think you make a great point right there. The rev share model can unintentionally decentivize growth, right? Over the term of a contract. Fulfillment provider is providing great service. Brand loves the service they're getting from the fulfillment provider. Brand projected growth at 30%. Brand is only growing at 25, 20, 15. There's material change in what's going on. geopolitics, storm, they get gated for 6 months on Amazon for some reason and lose out that channel, right? That there's no ill will or anything done wrong by the brand, but the dynamics of that deal have changed over time. And because of that layered in fee, like you're talking about, it now makes it cumbersome for everyone, right? And so something that was, hey, it looks like all incentives are aligned at the beginning, if everyone knows what's going on, may actually not be true, right? There's a lot of external factors that can come into play as you go forward. When 3PLs are bidding out business, they're making the best proposal they can make at that time with the information they have. We all know information gets better as things actualize, right? And the other side of that too is if the brand does exactly what they think, they thought they were going to grow at 20% and they're growing at 40, and because they're taking off, and the fulfillment provider is providing great service and catching up with them, and that growth is coming and they're growing, and they thought this was $1 million a year opportunity, and all of a sudden it's $1.5 million and two. Well, guess what? The matchmakers or some of the other opportunities that are out there are coming back and coming off of that growth as well. They made the introduction. I'm not necessarily sure the introduction facilitated that growth. I'm pretty sure that's the great operators, the great customer service teams, the great customer success teams, and the teams at the brands that are executing awesome marketing and operation strategies, right? And so I feel very strongly like you do that if you're going to play in the middle and you're going to be in the space, or you're going to somehow be a connector, you have to do it in a way in which there is value for everyone. And that may mean taking a little less value for yourself for long-term growth instead of short-term benefit, right? And I think that's where you and I have aligned, and where this has turned into what it has been from Slotted so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should definitely get into that. 'Cause part of the reason why I was so passionate about why something like Slotted should exist was because I saw this change in the ecosystem happening. It felt like every time you got on LinkedIn, there were 2 or 3 more matchmaking services that were coming up. There was this, which again, we've talked about how incentives may not always be aligned with those, at least on a long-term basis. I was having conversations from very large, very well-respected 3PLs that were basically saying like, yeah, first off, we're not desperate. Not that anybody who's on a matchmaker is desperate, but they're saying we can't afford, and one, we don't want to play in this space where it's a pay for play. And so those really good providers were being removed from consideration by those sorts of things. And then it comes back to this relationship piece. And really, everybody I've talked to talks about how important it is to have a relationship with your provider. And this is criticism we received on the ISBA side previously, was like, hey, we want to talk directly to the client. We're like, well, no, we're going to gatekeep a little bit. We're going to do these sorts of things. And we've changed that model. We've said, like, let's talk directly. We're here as a coach alongside you to help make sure that when it comes time to negotiate, we are, as a consultant, we're all over it, right? And so part of this was, how do we fix those things? How do we create something where you don't have to have a pay for play piece to be considered, right? And to be part of the ecosystem. How do we create something so that the brand is in 100% control of who they see and how they see them, and who they ultimately end up proposing? How do we build a coach directly into an application so that they don't need to have a consultant who's there? They get 99% of the way there just through the basis of the tool. And then lastly, how do we get to a point where the 3PLs can be much more efficient in those leads that they're getting, because they're pre-validated. They meet the ICP that they're created. And so I'd love to kind of walk through each of those in detail with you. And maybe you can just talk through how the search function starts. Let's start from a brand perspective. Maybe you be the brand, I'll be the fulfillment provider. And let's just talk about how this process works.
Yeah, definitely. So from the brand perspective, I come to Slotted. I know that I am going to be running an RFP at some point in time, right? I go to the website, I create an account, all free. No money to the brand at this point in time. I create my account and I set up my brand profile first. And I'm saying, this is the industry I'm in. This is generally what the qualities of my company look like from a high level, right? We're not asking for specific shipment level detail at that point in time. Just who are you, so that we can make sure we know who you're at. And as the system goes forward, we can make sure that the right people are talking to the right people. From there, I have the ability to search through what is the open source database that we talked about, right? The first iteration of Slotted came from the ISBA exchange. And so we leverage that to make sure that we have the right amount of fulfillment providers that are there. And they're able to see whoever they want to see. And they can search at the highest level, absolutely wide open, to the most stringent level that they want through either our geography and or our 30 plus filters,
So
right?
in other
So
words, if I need a FDA registered facility that's cold storage in Nevada, owned by private equity company, and deals in my category, I can filter down to that level of specificity.
yes, you can. And anybody who we have on the site that matches that level of specificity will come back, right? And I think the cool thing to think about here is where we talked about neutrality, not the companies that come back that also pay a higher tier level to be on the site so that we make sure they get in front of enough eyeballs, not the people who are paying ads on the site for us from a 3PL perspective, because those two things are not options, right? It is only people that meet every search criteria that the brand themselves has put into the system. And that's the only level of filtration and only level of narrowing down or control that Slotted itself is providing to the brand. So then from there, the brand says, let's just say in your scenario that spot in Nevada, Reno, let's say it is, hotbed for FDA cold storage, integrates with NetSuite, can do WooCommerce, has Tubox, whatever, right? As many criteria as you want to give. Let's say there's 35 people there. Well, now the question is, how do I get from 35 down further? Well, the brand needs to do the research, and we're not there to hold their hand for it, but they're able to see, okay, this is who it is. Let me go check the profile. I've Fulfillment Center 123, I've never heard of them before. I go in, Fulfillment Center 123 has set up their profile, they're very active. They're going to have, this is about us as a company, and this is about this specific location that you came to. It's secured. It's, we also do print on demand here for some reason, right? Like whatever it may be, that's there. And you can see reviews and feedback from actual users, people who have signed onto the website and have either done work with them in the past, are currently working with them, however that may be, but it's real information. Those reviews and those stars, like that's not preloaded by the brand. That has to be user generated, right? And then at the bottom, you can see, oh, I didn't realize they also have a location in Atlanta. That's phenomenal. I would love to have two pieces. Let me go click on that. They appeal to you, you can add them to your long list, right? Great. They don't appeal to you, you move on to the next one and you're looking through and you're doing this level of search, this level of research yourself as a brand to find that. Now the long list, let's say you had 35, you found 26 you like. The 26th person, you're not going to be able to add to that long list because from what we've understood, we want to make sure that we're helping brands stay very focused on what's there, right? So they need to understand and check. And then from there, you're going to hit send your RFI and you're going to check against, okay, I am very interested in what these fulfillment providers that match my search criteria have. Are they interested in me? And we'll get into that point when you talk about it from the fulfillment provider side. But at that point in time, hey, I send 3,000 orders a month and I ship to Target and I ship to Walmart and I ship to Wegmans and whatever it may be. Do they also support all of that? Well, if I filtered for that, the answer should be yes, but maybe there's some other criteria where we don't match. If we don't match at that point in time, I now have dwindled my list from 25 to whoever can match me. Now I can pull off the people that don't match, and maybe I had those 10 more that I didn't have space for. I can bring them in and check those again as well. But eventually I can get myself to, okay, these are the 25 that I know I'm very focused on, and I want to interact with them. Maybe I want to check and say, I'm about to go into a grocer in Canada. Are you able to support that as well? Right? I'm not doing it now, but this is something I'm looking forward to. And there's chat functionality. You could ask that message. You could start to ask some pre-questions just like you would. And the fulfillment providers are able to respond to you as long as you've reached out to them first, right? And we go from there. And now you're narrowing it down further. And now you're going to move to your short list. And that's maxed at 8. Because we want to make sure that the fulfillment providers are getting quality from their side, right? They're going to put a lot of time and effort in, but we also want to make sure the brand has been very thoughtful to that point. And so when they know who it is that you want to bring to your RFP, now I'm going to bring that down to the 8 people that are open to my type of business, that match the search criteria I've found. I'm going to invite them to my RFP, and I'm going to open that up. And this is where we'll switch over to the fulfillment provider side, because this is where it becomes very fun for them. I want to be very clear here. When a fulfillment provider is invited to the RFP, It's because the brand chose to bring them there. The only thing that Slotted did to help the brand find that fulfillment provider is have a large database of providers that have data rich profiles that they have filled out themselves for the shipper to be able to say, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and these are the people that exactly give me that. Right? So now I have a very high intent RFP that's there. And then the second piece is at that point in time, because we want to make sure the brands stay committed and they're not window shopping and they're not just rate shopping and they're being serious. I will, as a brand, will be charged a refundable deposit once my RFP is opened. And that will keep me pot committed to going through with my RFP at that point in time and make sure that fulfillment providers know that this really is a high intent opportunity.
Yeah, I love it. That's one of the things I'm most proud of how we built it was how do we get something that makes sure that we have really honest intent when we're going through and building this. And so, yeah, I love that. So let me go back and talk about kind of the 3PL. So it is completely free for every 3PL to be on there. And in fact, if you're a 3PL, we probably already have your information on Slotted already because we've been building this database for over 8 years and we've worked with thousands of providers that have that information.
So before you go further, how does somebody claim their profile if their location's already there because they were part of the exchange?
Yeah, super easy. You're going to go to slotted.com. You're going to go to find 3PL. You're going to type in the name of your 3PL. You're going to click on the profile and you're going to push claim profile. And what that will do is it will take you through the onboarding flow where you will be able to set up your team, set up your information, and you'll be able to actually change what shows up on your profile. By default, there's not a whole lot of graphics or things on there. It's very plain. It's be about what you would expect from a Excel database, but you have the ability to make this so much richer. And the providers that we've talked to that are really embracing this, they are inviting their clients to rate them, right? Because those ratings and reviews can stand out. Imagine if I'm looking through here and I see a sea of empty and I see one with 10 5-stars. Well, guess who I'm including into my shortlist? Probably that company, right? And you can upload videos, you can have graphics, you can put out every integration and things that you're doing to help you show up in more filters and to get credit for the good work that you're already being done. And so that first part of claiming your profile and getting set up is very similar to the brand side. You create your company profile, you invite other team members, because this is meant to be a collaboration tool where if I'm the head of sales, I can invite 3 or 4 other people too so that we can see where we are with the different leads and see where those things are. But the most important thing that you do at the beginning is you define who your ICP is. And we've got a number of parameters that are there. And so if you say that we only want beauty companies that are shipping 5,000 orders a day or more, that and we don't want to do retail, right? You can be so specific with about like 12 other parameters you can look at. And what will happen is in that RFP long list RFI piece, if there is a beauty brand that ships 5,001 orders a day and does retail, we're going to knock it out because you said you're not interested in that. And so you are only going to see the leads of people that have chose to talk to you, and you've saved time by both sides by saying, this is our criteria, this is what we work with.
Okay. So am I hearing this right when you're saying it? This isn't here to replace a 3PL sales cycle. It's here to enhance their sales cycle?
Absolutely. It's here to make it shorter. It's make your existing team more effective, avoid the riffraff of everybody going through and struggling and just taking all these crap leads that they have to talk to, and just being very, very thoughtful about how they're using their time and things like that. And so, the key thing here is that it's free to have your profile. It's free to set up. If you sign up for the subscription, which again, we've priced this to be a bit of a no-brainer, then you get the access to unlimited RFPs, unlimited leads, things like that. And you'll actually be able to allow brands to invite you to these RFPs.
Yeah. And I think that's the really interesting piece. We talked about it early on, but to come back to it again, because we're talking high quality, high intent, we're already cutting down, right? So if what you're looking for is 10 million leads a year, this probably isn't the solution for that. But if you're looking for high quality leads that want to talk with you so that your sales team can focus on what you actually hired them for, which is closing the deal, like this is that opportunity. Awesome. Yeah. So you talked about it. It's free to be on. It's free to have your profile. It's free to be searched. There is the subscription piece, which we price it away, should be low barrier to entry and high ROI if you start to really work out the details of what your deal dynamics typically look like. Um, but let's say I haven't subscribed and Joe's brand found me. What happens?
Well, Joe's going to see that you're not interested in new clients at this point, right? You're going to lose that RFI trigger, and so the brands that are open for RFPs via the subscription will get that RFP. Now, that person, if you have a really compelling profile, they may choose to find your website and go through there, and then they kind of get lost in that total thing. But again, what we get to is this isn't just a lead generation platform. What is so powerful about Slotted is actually the RFP process.
Yeah.
And so what we've done as a prerequisite for both the brand and the provider is you are preloading a lot of information. On the brand side, we're going to be pulling in a year's worth of shipping data. We're going to stratify that into metrics and graphics that make sense to a provider to understand if this is a deal worth pursuing. So for example, if somebody is highly seasonal, you want to know that. If they have a SKU base that is massive and there's a huge distribution in terms of where those orders are, you want to know that. If they're heavier on some days or others, if they're multi-channel, these are all things that you're going to have to do manually to really understand and back into if this deal is a good deal or not. When we build the RFP, the brand goes through, answers some questions, gives very clear indications around what they're interested in. Is their incumbent still bidding? When they would look to be moving? What would be things outside of cost that would encourage them to move? And what the system does is it actually builds a unique data room, a unique web page for that RFP. And so you think about this is not a PDF anymore. This is now a clickable, highly rich RFP that both the brand and the 3PL can take a look at. The 3PL gets this RFP lead that comes through. They can decide who they want on their team to own that conversation, who they want to, how they want to address it. You can message directly with the brand, and like literally in the app. You don't have to go outside the app if you don't want to, but you kind of go through their instant messenger sort of thing. And then you get all these details about the profile of this company. And at that point, you can decide, am I going to bid? Am I not going to bid? And if you choose to bid, what most providers do is actually choose to pre-upload their base contract rates, both parcel and pick and pack. And what you're able to do there is that can help save some time because you're preloading those into the platform. You're able to go through and change exactly what you want to do. And so perhaps for this particular brand, it's a little bit more complicated, so I want to change my pick rate. Or perhaps I only want to show some parcel rates, and I can change the margin that I would want to charge on particular areas down to the shipping matrix point of view, or just in general by what's there. So you're basically able to look at this and start from all that data that you had anyways. And think about this, how many times have you had a situation where a sales person uploaded the wrong contract or the wrong rates, and you had to go back after, like, oh, sorry, like this was wrong, or I didn't include my margin, etc. That all goes away because it's controlled, it's structured, you're able to put it through there, and you go through that. You're able to build a very nice RFP. You can record a video that you upload into the RFP response and basically walk them through why people are there. If you have brands that have rated you, can include those testimonials. You can include those connections to those brands so they can talk directly. And again, think about today in the 2020s, you still have 3PLs that are responding back to RFPs with Word docs and PDFs. Now you have a data-rich web page that allows you to see exactly what's there. And not only that, you're able to do some back-of-the-envelope math inside the tool to say, what is this going to be worth to me from a revenue and from a profit perspective? And so from a 3PL perspective, I can manage all of this so much better to understand, okay, it's important to go after volume, but I want good volume. And so maybe I'm going to say no to a deal that is going to be a lot of dead revenue, and I'm not going to make a whole lot because I want to save room for a client that better fits my profile. And all of that happens behind the scenes with the provider, and then they're able to submit their RFP to the brand, who then gets to look at everything in reverse.
Yeah, I think it's a really effective way for fulfillment providers to streamline their RFP process. You're not starting from scratch every single time. You have a lot of information that's there. The tool is very effective in the sense that there's always some uncertainty, right? Brand says they're growing at 20% year over year. What if they don't? you have the ability to look at that and say, okay, if I have my pricing the way I have it and they come in at 80% of the volume, what does that look like? They come in more than that. What does that look like? Do I really have my minimums in the right spots? Am I really hitting the right keys? And that's a piece of feedback. I've been fortunate to be speaking with a lot of the fulfillment providers over the past couple of weeks as we've gone out public and talked with people about the solution. And that's a lot of the feedback that we get, which is, oh, that's very interesting that I'm able to see that way how it goes. But a couple of pieces of pushback that I get that I want you to address, and I can address too, is, well, if I preload my rates, then everyone can see my rates. If you preload your rates, who sees them?
Just the fulfillment provider.
Until they have done an RFP and have actually sent that proposal to a brand, right? And at that point, that brand's only seeing the proposal specific for them, right?
Yeah, let's be clear about what this is. This is not a race to the bottom from a cost perspective. There is no filter at all anywhere on Slotted, nor will there be where I can search and say, show me lowest price. Right. That is not going to exist because, again, relationship is the core that's right here. We want people to understand that price is important, right? And you'll continue to win and lose deals in large part because of that price. But we want you to build that relationship from the beginning as you go through.
Right. And every piece of business is different. Not every piece is the same. Not every piece of business needs to be priced the same. Not every business cares about the same cost lines in an invoice for different reasons, right? What people really want to be and should be going for is for value, and we want to make sure that you're able to demonstrate that. And I think that's the feedback that we've gotten, which we've done that in an effective way. One of the other questions that I get a lot is, well, what happens if I get into the RFP and I get invited, but I don't want to take part of it, or I start asking questions and then I want to back out of it? What does that cost me?
Nothing. Again, the subscription gets you the right to unlimited RFPs and unlimited proposals. Right. And actually, if you bring a brand that you got from another channel outside of Slotted, that doesn't cost you anything either. Right. You can say, hey, use this platform, sign up. We want to run our RFPs through here. That is part of your subscription.
Yep. And I think that's a really interesting feature. And then when we talk about those things, the next question I get is, well, then how the heck are you guys making money off of this piece? Right. Like, it seems like I get everything for free. How is this? What's the catch? Where are you going to come for my wallet, right? And maybe not as blunt as that, but that's the sentiment behind it, because a lot of models that exist out there, it feels like there's a payment step at every single turn for a fulfillment provider. So how have we thought through that, or how have you and I thought through that together?
Yeah, and I kind of love the way that you frame it, where the goal of Slotted is not to extract maximum value financially from the ecosystem. We really think that if we build a big enough network, that this will fund itself and together. We are making our money off of the subscriptions. That is how we keep the lights on. That's how we fund things through that. There is a award fee that is paid out. It's a very modest award fee. If you end up going through and finding a brand through Slotted and they end up signing with you. And that award fee is really just meant to reinvest in the product. We've got that earmarked in our P&L, where future enhancements and future things that we want to do, that's how we do it. So think of that as the provider's investment into the platform to make it better, to give them more of the features that would make their life easier.
Right. And we talked a lot before about the different models that are out there, right? And some challenges that can come for, it's a rev share, it's in perpetuity, it's for a period of time. The award fee, what's the structure of that look like?
Yeah, it's a flat fee, one time, paid months after that person has moved into your facility. And so, again, we want this to be a bit of a no-brainer. We want you to be able to afford it. We want it to kind of be there. And you'll see what the award fee is going to be as you're making that proposal. So we'll be able to say, hey, this is where it's at. This is what that total revenue piece is going to be to you. Based on the tiers, here's what that award fee would look like. And if you don't like that, you can not bid, right? I guess that's the way you go.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really like about that structure and feedback that we've gotten from brands as well is, what that is, right? So the downside to protect against, or if you're taking on a level of risk, which is no different than if you were pricing this business yourself without us being there, there still is potential for downside. So it's in your best interest as a fulfillment provider to protect that. But the upside is all yours, right? Because once that's been billed and once that's been paid, unless you win another deal and you are charged another award fee, we're not coming back for any money on the deal and what you've delivered there. And I think that's what's really interesting, because if you are going to be a fulfillment provider that is going to sell and promise helping a brand grow, bringing extra value to them by keeping them in stock or delivering faster, better customer experience, all the different talking points that should be said. Well, if you deliver on that, well, that's great for you and great for the brand, and you should be rewarded for that. You shouldn't have to have it lingering in your head that Joe's coming back to ask me for his percentage of that growth, right? And to your point, right, we're not maximizing the value monetarily. We're maximizing the value that we're bringing from elevating the boats that are out in the sea of fulfillment right now, and brands, because ultimately it's good for brands too when they end up in the right spots.
Yeah, being able to have the internet's largest open database of 3PLs and having a tool that walks you through the search, the analysis, as well as the decision is super valuable. Joe, I think you and I could talk about this for a long time. If people want to learn more about Slotted or want to connect with you, what's the right way to do that?
Yeah. Um, we'll go the self-learning way first because that's what Slotted is all about, being in control of it yourself. Head to www.slotted.com. Our website there has a bunch of the information that we talked about, talks about the pricing structure, what benefits and values we bring to both providers and to brands who are looking for fulfillment. From there, you can look at who's on the website. You can create your account, which for brands, it's free. For fulfillment providers, it's free. Take control of your profile, get yourself out there, show off what makes you better and different than everyone else. Brands, you're able to window shop as much as you want until you're ready to do that RFP process. And then from there, you're able to leverage the system. I'm always available and more than happy to talk to anybody that's there as well. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact us through our website. You can contact me at joe@slotted.com. You can go to contact@slotted.com. We're always happy to talk with fulfillment providers and brands to help answer any questions you have. We know that what we're doing at the core is not new to the industry, but the way that we're going about it is a little different. So we're always happy to answer any questions that you have that we weren't able to cover in this conversation between you and I, Aaron.
Great. Appreciate it, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for your time and for putting together this great product for us to bring to market.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.